From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to Open Line. I am Ben Hall. Great show tonight. We are talking about the history of political jingles. Really, this is a chance to get a history lesson in Tennessee politics through music. And so tonight we are going to hear some of these political jingles. We're state known for music, so obviously our political jingles are pretty colorful. Happy to have with us Kent Seiler, MTSU political science professor, and Jim Williams with the Albert Gore Research Center, the director of it. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
You've been on before, and it was a great show before, and I'm excited to have you back on. So let's talk about, I guess, the Prisonaires. Let's start there.
Okay.
The Prisonaires. They did a jingle for Frank Clement, Governor
Yes.
Frank Clement. A lot of fascinating backstory here. Let's just kind of get into that, and then we're going to play some of what they did. But what's the backstory?
It is a very fascinating story, and it really, Jim had done some work on the Prisonaires and had talked to me about it, but it never really came home to me until I went and we were touring Sun Records in Memphis, Elvis's studio, and up on the wall there they were. And it really brought it home. So, I know about them. And then Bob Clement's been a good friend for a long time, and I met Johnny Bragg several times, and they would say he was one of the Prisonaires. He wrote Walking in the Rain, Getting Soaking Wet, and it didn't mean anything to me. But then I got to looking at it, and you find that these were prisoners that when Frank Clement came in, he kind of reformed a lot of Tennessee's prison system. It was a bad place to be when he was governor, but it was a horrible place to be in a southern Tennessee prison before that. And these gentlemen were able to sing. They became kind of trustees. Guards took them down to Sun Records. They cut a record. And they say that's the president of Sun Records says that that's what lured Elvis then to Sun Records. And Bob Clement has talked about being a child in the governor's mansion and Elvis and the Prisonaires performing there on Curtiswood Lane, and he had to go to bed. So it is a fascinating tale. And we did find this jingle that the Prisonaires did for Frank Clement.
So, I mean, to reset there, that is very interesting, something you certainly wouldn't have happen today. But these guys, they were in prison.
They were in prison.
And I guess people noticed them singing in prison, and somehow they got out. They were taken out,
They
right?
were discovered. Well, they were still prisoners, but they would let them with guards, and there are some tales of later on without guards, as they kind of got to set their own schedule sometimes, but they would kind of give their testimony and how they have gotten straightened out, and they would sing, and so they became very popular, and they sold a lot of records.
And is it true that they wrote some of the? I mean, is that some of the sense too? Do you know about? Did they write some of these things themselves? Were they performing their own material? In other words.
I think so. You're the expert on
Yeah, well,
what do you think?
A lot of the amazing thing is that that Johnny Bragg, the gentleman that was the lead in writing this stuff, they called him Buckethead. He would sit in the prison because he couldn't hit the high notes. He put a bucket on his head, and he would write and sing into the bucket, and he would write these songs. And there are tales of country music stars paying him $5 to write the song and then performing it. So again, an incredibly fascinating individual, a fascinating group, all tied in with Elvis and Tennessee politics.
Elvis and Tennessee politics. Okay, we're going to listen to it in a moment, but now let's kind of get a sense of the time and what's going on politically in the time. So this is What About Frank Clement, sung by the Prisonaires that we'll hear in a few moments. But what's the context here? Who was Frank Clement running against, and when do we hear this particular jingle come about? What's the context there?
This is it started in the 50s. At the time, Frank Clement was elected. He was the last governor to have a 2-year term, and they changed the Constitution in the early 50s, as I understand it, so that it would be a 4-year term, but you couldn't succeed yourself. So you could have one 4-year term, you could come back and run again after sitting out. So they started what became known as leapfrogging. And really, back then, whoever won the Democratic primary in Tennessee won office. So
Back then, we were a very democratic state.
in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
So the leapfrogging was between Frank Clement and then his agriculture secretary and campaign manager, Buford Ellington. So they flip-flopped back and forth. So Clement was governor until 58. So the prisoners, the mid-50s was their, I guess, strong pot. That was the term that they were really.
Yeah.
We're talking about Elvis and President Truman staying at the governor's mansion, hearing the prisoners, that sort of thing.
Were these difficult battles back then? Did Frank Clement face a lot of tough competition, or was it just kind of, the leapfrogging, as you said? It was kind of a given.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
one thing I discovered or looked into a little bit more recently was there's this sort of attack song, a parody of My Darling Clementine that we have called Happy Pappy Clementine. And I was trying to figure out what year that was from, and it seems to be from the 54 election, because Clement beat Gordon Browning in 52, another Democrat. So there was some bad blood there, apparently, and this attack song came out about Clement. So the bad blood was really the battles were between Democrats,
Yeah.
but I think Clement and Ellington had this arrangement to
And
just come back
Ellington
and
was his
forth.
agricultural secretary, and that is really interesting.
Yeah,
They were going back and forth.
They would move one. Yeah, so Clement served the last two. The first 4-year term, Ellington came in, then Clement came back. So 10 years in all. So longest, I guess, the longest accumulated
And
service.
he announced his bid for a 4th term in '69, and a couple days later was killed in a car crash. So
Oh, wow.
Frank Clement. So
That's what happened.
He
That's
was
how it
trying
ended.
to come back for a 4th term as governor.
And an incredibly charismatic and important figure in Tennessee politics, the 1956 keynote speaker of the Democratic National Convention, one of 3 Tennesseans vying to be vice president, vice presidential candidate, a protege of Billy Graham. And you'll notice when you hear this song that there is an incredible amount of religion in it. We talk about religion and politics now. Just listen to when you listen to it, listen to the amount of religion in it.
All right, well, let's take a listen. This is from the Prisonaires, mid-1950s. What About Frank Clement? Political jingle.
Now then, what about Clement? Well, what about Clement? He's a mighty man. I mean Frank Clement. Yes, he's a mighty, 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 mighty man of God. Now then, what about Clement? Mighty man. Well, what about Clement? He's a mighty man. I mean Frank Clement. Mighty man. He's a mighty, 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 mighty man of God. Now then, stop, praise God, yes, and listen to me. Let me tell you about the man of Tennessee. He's a God-fearing man. He's not on his own bar. He gets his orders straight from the throne. Well, he judges fair, yes, and square with all. No in between for the great and small. Now then, what about Clement? Mighty man. Well, what about Clement? The mighty man. I mean Frank Clement. Mighty man. He's a mighty, 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 mighty man of God. Now then, 1900, yes, it's 52. You know God told Clement just what to do. Well, he called him from Dixon County land, saying to go down to Nashville and make my stand. Well, you rule wise, yes, and have no fear. You call on me, Frank, child, I'm always near. Well, he came to the Capitol, he made that stand. He found the state government in a mighty bad hand. Well, he got his broom.
So that's even a little longer than a jingle. That's
It
your
is.
full,
This one is, it's almost 3 minutes.
almost
so
3 minutes. It's a full-length single.
Yeah.
And that picture, that is of them, the
Yes.
Prisonaires. You said there was a big spread done in, what was it, Time Magazine or Life
Yeah,
Magazine?
Life Magazine. I've really found it for the first time today preparing for this. Some beautiful pictures of them from that era. So, I mean, these people, this was a significant thing nationally.
It's really interesting. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We are going to talk about other political jingles. Vote for Hooker. We're going to hear that in our next segment. Vote for John J. Hooker. We'll hear that. And we even have a disco version. How exciting is that? All right, we'll take a break. If you want to call, join in any conversation, there's the number 737+, 737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.